All right, it's time. We'll go ahead and kick this off. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you might be zooming in from. My name is Matt Robinson from SCSI. Just wanted to welcome everybody to our newest Learn at Lunch for Emergency Response and Family Assistance Planning. We will be recording this, so if you want to view it at a later time to show your colleagues, by all means, that will be available to you for about 2 weeks. Today's session will go just about 30 minutes. And in preparation for our full course in October 9 through 11, that will be online exclusively. So our first speaker, we've got two today to contribute to the Learn at Lunch. The first speaker will be Mr. Frank Ciaccio. Frank is currently the Director of Emergency Management for the Houston Airport System, and he's responsible for the strategic leadership for emergency management, along with providing the technical guidance during emergency response at international airports such as IAH, Bush International Airport in Houston, Hobby, Ellington, and the surrounding area. Frank is a former member of the NTSB. He coordinated the recovery and forensic operations during domestic and international crashes as well. So he'll be our first speaker, and then he's going to turn it over to Mr. Thomas Ulein. Thomas is coming to us from Germany today, and he is the principal, CEO, president of the International Crisis Academy. Thomas is a longtime colleague and friend of mine, experience in the European theater, in particular the broken wing exercise. If you've heard of that, it's quite an excellent exercise that, as you may know, kind of tries to produce as realistic of a scenario as possible while introducing complex issues to challenge those participants in rapid problem solving, sand table exercises, things like that. So we'll go 30 minutes. We will not have time for questions in this, but if you do have questions, an email will be provided at the end of the presentation, in addition to an email that will allow you to register as well if you're interested in our ERFA class in October. So with that, I will stop share here and I will turn the share over to Frank. So stand by just 1 second. Frank, are you able to share now? There you go. I see it. Excellent.
Okay. Let me just go to full screen here. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, go down to slideshow on the lower table, if you would, the lower toolbar.
Apologize.
There, the little screen.
Apologize. These I have a government computer and they tend to hold on 1 second. There we go. Okay, we're all set there. Okay,
Looks good.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone here on the line. I'm very honored and pleased to present to you family assistance planning. What are the components? What are the structures? What you need to be aware of, whether you're a airline, a organization or company, what you can provide and how you can develop the framework for your organization in developing family assistance planning. Our objective is very simple today. It's going to be an introduction to family assistance planning, what the components or subjects are, like I just explained, like I just mentioned to you. We'll go into some of the highlights of the family assistance planning, but most importantly, how to effectively respond to an aviation accident and incident while making sure that you provide support to not only the victims, but to the families as well. And throughout the world, in many countries, there are very specific legislative requirements, which we'll touch upon those throughout the presentation. So what is family assistance planning? It is a comprehensive operational level document that addresses the needs of the families and passengers of those involved in aviation accidents. Very simple. What is it that we as an air carrier can provide to families at a time of need or to those victims when there is an aviation accident? It also provides assurances focusing on information sharing, logistical support, and the provisions of various services identified in the applicable legislation. And that's very critical. There are specific requirements that as an airline, you must provide to families. And we'll go into some of those, some of the 4 requirements that airlines need to do in a few moments. But really, it's sharing of information back and forth, keeping families and victims informed of what the process is. And that's critical here, what the process is, because this is a time when families and victims themselves don't understand what's going on. They're put into a very different environment, and they just need assurances how they're going to get through this event, both physically and emotionally. The purpose of the Family Assistance Plan is to establish roles and procedures in responding to an aviation accident. Basically, what are specific roles and procedures for agencies that will respond? There's going to be a multitude of agencies, organizations, NGOs that have specific roles, but it's important to know what their role is rather than working in silos and compartmentalizing them. The Family Assistance Plan will outline what the carrier will provide to the victims and the families, as what we outlined in what we call family support tasks. There are 2 very important documents that are critical for anybody that's establishing a family assistance plan. One through ICAO, which outlines assistance to aircraft accidents victims and their families. This is on the international arena. And then the NTSB, which has really been the grandfather per se of family assistance when it started back in the 1990s. And I was privileged to be part of that team in the early onset of family assistance, and to really develop the structure, the framework that is utilized today as the standard across the world. We want to be able to, in the family assistance plan, be able to establish communication with families. Who's responsible for that? Providing support to the families, whether it's through the Red Crescent Society, the American Red Cross, specific non-governmental organizations that will provide support to law enforcement, medical, so forth. Provide realistic expectations, and that's very critical. You have to decide within an organization what are realistic expectations of providing, giving things back to the families. And in my career, unfortunately, I've seen everything from people wanting very expensive items to help them get through, but those aren't realistic. You want to be able to provide support to them that will get them through the early stages of the trauma, the early stages of the event, so that once insurance and things of that nature start kicking in, they have been supported along the way. A place for families to get answers. Back in the day, there was a time when you didn't want to provide families. They don't need to know that information. We have to live in a very transparent society today, and it's important for families to get answers, but to also be honest with their answers. Sometimes those answers are going to be very difficult for them to hear and understand, but they must be made aware of it. If you hide the truth, you will never rebound and develop your credibility or have your credibility stand through the remainder of the operation. And be able to support the families in the grief process. And that's also very important. We're supporting them. There's a big difference between empathy and sympathy. Unless you've been through this and had the loss of a loved one in a plane crash, as a worker, you don't understand what that family is going through. Be there as an ear, listen. A lot of times, listening gains a lot more territory than providing false answers or non-realistic answers. The typical tasks that you see in what we referenced as the family support task is an understanding of what different organizations are going to do. The NTSB, the air carrier, will have very specific roles in what they can and cannot provide. One of the critical phases in what the airline can say and cannot say. Typically, the rule of thumb we always used to use is If you could say it before an accident, then you could say it now. But if you couldn't say it before an accident, then you cannot talk about the accident itself. You cannot talk about specifics, what you thought happened, things of that nature. Those are left up to the investigative agency, the NTSB. The legislative, non-legislative. What is a legislative accident? What is a non-legislative accident? And typically that's seen more here in the United States. And there's criteria for that. In the course, we'll provide what those specific areas are. We'll talk about crisis communication. There's a difference between public affairs or there's a difference with a public relations firm versus crisis communication. This is a time of crisis, so there's different approaches on how we provide information, what we expect, what we don't. We also live in a world today where there's not the typical nuclear family. You want to be careful on that. What constitutes a family member? There are many individuals that were raised either by extended family or by friends and so forth, grandparents. You must be able to open that, be able to account for all that and be able to provide support for all those needs. There's a difference between a friends and relatives reception center versus a family assistance center. We'll talk about that in the course. And most importantly, in family briefings, this is very critical. Talk about the investigative process, personal effects, and family interviews. Getting information. Not only are we providing information to families, but we need to get information back so that we can assist them in making those proper identifications, that the medical examiner coroner has that information to make the identification quickly and timely, and most importantly, accurately. When we develop a family assistance plan, who should be included in that process? You want to be able, anybody within your organization that has a role in providing assistance during an accident, you want to include them. We want to avoid those silos in horizontal type reactions. We want to be able to make everything vertical, meaning that you bring in those different business units within your organization and see what their role is. See what they're responsible for providing, because you might be duplicating efforts, and that's something you want to avoid. So when developing your plan, bring all the parties in together so that everybody understands firsthand and hears firsthand what is being said, what is being done, and who's responsible for what. What to consider in the plan. So we talked about the fundamental concerns of family members. We want to be able to make sure that family members' needs are being met. The notification process, making sure that they're notified in a timely, efficient manner. And there's a very specific structure on how that's done. Here in the United States, a 1-800 number is published right away that the air carrier must provide. Other countries, they have other methods, but it's getting that notification out immediately, timely, so that family members, friends can start calling you. The victim accounting, knowing who's on board that aircraft, knowing who's involved in the incident. That's critical so that the proper authorities know, are they dealing with fatal victims or are they dealing with victims that are in hospitals? And like I said to you, information and resources. There are going to be many, many organizations that want to be part of family assistance, but what is your mechanism in vetting them? How do you know, are they legitimate or not? Do you have plans for them? Do you have process? These are all things that when developing your plan, you've created ahead of time and discuss so that everybody is aware and everybody is on the same plane of thought. As we talked about the communication, you'll hear this a lot. Communications with families is extremely critical. I can't stress that enough because we lived in a time before where people held back information. We're in a very transparent society today. The more people know, the more they know, the least amount of questions they'll ask, or they know that you're being honest and upfront with them. The emotional support, that's going to be very critical. Having the Red Crescent, the American Red Cross, those organizations who are experts in that are good at handling that. Make sure you include them in your planning process. But most importantly, understand whether you're from another country that has an Aviation Family Assistance Act, understand what your legal rights are what you're supposed to do legally and non-legally. If you follow those legislative requirements, then you will develop a more robust plan and avoid getting yourself or your organization in any sort of trouble or conflict. The success of a family assistance plan is very, very simple. It's planning and preparing. What do you need to prepare for the plan? How do you go about developing the plan? And being able to address those needs of the victims and their families. If you have that, you know what they require, talk to experts, talk to people who have been involved in these processes. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. See what the requirements are for families, what you are legally responsible to do or not have to do. You want to build that trust. I said that multiple times, but I can't stress enough. Trust, rapport, credibility. That is what family assistance planning is all about. Making those families feel comfortable and that they're also part of the process, but that you know what you're doing. That is extremely important because once you lose credibility and trust, very rarely do you get a chance to regain it again. Have your management understand this. These family assistance centers or process for families are very expensive, very costly. So, what insurance companies are for, but there has to be a level of expectation from management that you're there to provide that support to those family members. And most importantly, be extremely flexible. Flexible is critical in operations like this. It's very difficult and it's almost impossible to write a plan for every specific scenario or situation. You have a plan that has the framework that you can build upon. You can increase it, decrease it, but most importantly, make sure you build a plan that is flexible and that is adjustable. We learned all this, unfortunately, through previous accidents. We've learned historically, based on accidents in Europe, Asia, the United States, what are the best methods? How do we move forward? How do we go? So these were not knee-jerk reactions that we've developed from incidents. These are very thought out, talking to family members, talking to agencies, and so forth. So we're continually improving on emergency response, and my colleague Thomas will talk about that. But this is a component of emergency response. It's family assistance. Okay, without family assistance, you're missing 50% of what emergency response is. So as Matt said, the course will be online October 9th through 11th. Again, if you have questions in reference to me, please refer them to the email address below. At this time, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Thomas. So I will stop sharing my screen at this time. Thomas, I think it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I will directly continue sharing my screen. So you should see it right now. Is it the correct one? Can you see my screen, Frank?
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So going from the detailed picture of family assistance planning to the broader picture of the whole emergency plan, the first question is, what is an emergency response plan? Sorry. The emergency response plan is providing an umbrella, which is established under the responsibility of the aerodrome or airport to cover everything, every emergency which might occur at the airport or in the vicinity of airport, and is also responsible or designed to coordinate all actions between different agencies and departments who might be involved, depends on the case. What is it for? What should it support? First, to minimize all the effects. First of all, saving lives, reducing injuries, and also preventing additional damage from property and environment of the airports, of the airlines, and of course of the passengers. Next is then the focus, coordinate response actions. We have fire brigades, we have ATC, we have border police, customs, airport operator, aircraft operator, security services, ground handling provider, whomever might be, need to coordinate, and the document is providing the basic for it. How to do it and how to manage this. And as I said, and it should help to prepare various types of emergencies. We have different areas. We will see this later in the presentation. So we have firefighting, areas. We have security areas, health, also natural disasters. What is the basic? What is the backbone of an emergency plan? It's, of course, it's the law and the acts. Here we have the mother of the law, of course, it's ICAO Annex 14, and then the sub-documents from ICAO Airport Service Manuals, Part 1, Rescue Firefighting, 5, Removal of Disabled Aircrafts, and of course, which is the major part here, it's Part 7, it's Emergency Planning. And then we have all these national additional laws, means ICAO need to be implemented on national level. So here we have it for the US, it's by FAA, or European theater, we have the ERFA. And then in addition, we have other laws. So we have international health law, we have the UN national labor law, which also might affect, and also national laws against natural disasters. For example, now we have also, which came in place for climate change, which need to be considered. In addition to laws and acts, then we have, of course, also guidelines. So we have NFPA, we have also IATA. IATA is not a law. IATA, as an organization as such, is a representative of their clients, of airlines. And of course, they provide also guidelines for emergency. The same like we have it also for on the airport level, Airport International Council, so ACI. Also, they prepared a handbook which provides some guidance materials. So if we start from the broader picture, as I said, we start outside the boundaries and the fence of the airport. In general, by law, we need to cover 5 kilometers or 8 miles in the vicinity of the airport. So that means we cover each and every area from the center point of the airport. That means we need to know everything about villages, forests, mountains, rivers, based on the map, which you can see here now on your screen, but also it could be jungle, swamps, even water. So if you have close to a river or to the sea. If we then go closer, then we have our airport grid map, which is also required. So it provides the similar quadrants on the airport so that we are able to show and to see what is happening at the airport and where is it located for quick actions and communication. So it means you see it's outside the airport, we have 8 miles boundary. Inside, we cover each and everything, and we have it marked in squares to communicate it much better. But before we go and discuss the emergency, we need to check what kind of environment do we have? What kind of airport do we have? And also, is our emergency responsible or covering additional areas? So it's not only firefighting for aircrafts, but also structural firefighting. Then we have special buildings, we have special businesses, we have hotels, we have a tower, we have workshops, we have maybe a joint use airport, means military or customs with special equipped aircrafts. So all those businesses need to be considered. when establishing our emergency response plan. And our emergency cases are characterized in 6 areas. First of all, as I said, firefighting. Here we have structural firefighting and everything related to buildings. Industrial firefighting, if we have industrial workshop, for example, a workshop for aircraft maintenance. Then, of course, aircraft fire, aircraft crash, DGR, and vehicle accidents, which normally also covered by the fire brigade. Then we have the security part, which is then everything from bomb threat, via hijacking, kidnapping, shooting, or just intrusion like we had it in Europe quite often lately, so that we have those guys who are gluing themselves on the runway. So this is covered also by that. So we have medical cases like we have in the past. We had the case that we had an influenza Ebola case, also Corona. So, and this is then normally covered by the Ministry of Health or their subordinates. We have animal diseases, of course, which also quite often be the case. So bird flu, chicken plague, swine fever. So we hear in the news from time to time again that this is also transmitted. And if you have passengers who bring some stuff with them in the bags, so also they bring potentially all of these diseases with them. Cybersecurity is a new area which was not covered in the beginning when they started with the emergency response plan. We have it lately here also now. That's coming, it's more often. So we have the airport ID is down, like we had it, I think it was 2 weeks ago with Microsoft, a worldwide problem. So since everything is globalized, we have airport electricity down, sorry, or even the airport fuel system could be down if it's a hydrant system. In other disasters we had, hard rain, flood, earthquake, tornado. Frank, for example, this area was, let's say, affected. Also, we had an earthquake of a volcano. So we had volcano ashes in Sicily last week. So all those areas need to be covered, need to be considered in an emergency plan. So it's a lot of work if you imagine how many agencies need to be involved for each individual case. If it comes to the crisis management organization, so we need to be aware that we need to work in different areas in the same time, which makes it even more challenging. So we have the crash site as such, or the accident site. We have the command center, then the family assistance, which Frank presented. And then, of course, we have also still ongoing airport operation. Assuming we have 2 runways, that means we might be able to operate a second runway or need to rebook and dealing with the passengers who wanted to fly but not able to. We have different command levels, which should help us to manage then the emergency. First, level 1 is the incident commander. That means the manager on the crash site, and he gets supported by a permanent command post, which is supporting him with all the resources which he might need on the crash site. And then we have the crisis management team, which manages everything beside the incident site. So they prepare and organize all the surroundings, dealing with the press and all the other stakeholders. Depends on the size of the airport and the organization of the airport. It might be that level 2 and level 3 are merged into one unit. This is also a common practice. Stakeholders involved. We have a lot of stakeholders which help us to solve the issue or the challenge, the accident, but also who might need information and requests information who need to be involved. So that means we have all the support units which we have at the airport. So it means we have fire brigades, we have volunteer fire brigades in the surrounding. If we are lucky, we get the Air Force with medevac helicopters. We have other armed forces, medical units, which might locate it or have an office at the airport site. If it comes to public, we have, of course, we have TV stations, press, spectators, even meeters and greeters who wanted to pick up some family members or just say farewell to others who wanted to leave. Logistics, and this is just an excerpt of a lot of others, restaurants, pharmacy, whatever we need to cover and to manage the accident in this group. Then, of course, we have the owner. This might be the county, this might be the state, this might be a mixture of private investor as well in combination with the state. So different kind of ownership models are on the market. So then we have the involved departments and parties of the airport organization as such. Ground handling, passenger handling, fire brigade, security insurance also might be involved. Even insurance don't come into to your mind in the first glance. And then we have also the authorities, as I mentioned, CA, customs, ministries, different kind of police, depends from in which state you are located, and then also the prosecutor. Don't forget them. The reason is you need to organize yourself also to answer his questions afterwards. An emergency plan is only an umbrella asset. So that means beside emergency plan, you have different other sub-documents which you need to deal with, which you need to align with. It might be that you have a regional emergency plan. You have an airport user regulation, or you have a fire order, which you need to also to align. You need to have an aircraft recovery plan, which then has, again, the documents from the aircraft manufacturers in the back. So we have a document which describes the operation of a permanent command post or crisis center. We have standard procedure SOPs of all involved departments. We have an annual emergency training plan. We have a LERAP, so local airline emergency plan, or from a flight school, whatever you have at the airport located. Then you should have available your risk analysis that you have it done. So you also can assess what kind of resources you need. You need to have border protection plan. If you use foam for distinguishing the fire, you can directly order the caterpillar to dig out later on the earth. And of course, as Frank already mentioned, the family assistance plan. Training and testing. The purpose of it is that we prepare individuals in a team and units to effective response to emergency at the aerodrome. So that means we have different kind of training requirements. We have a regular training. So that means everyone who's involved in emergency response should be trained on the procedures, on the equipment, on collaboration and communication. So we have then a different level of training, which means, especially in Europe, we have initial training, we have recurrent and specialized training. Means whoever was in the military, it's a similar approach. You have your basic training, then you get to special training, and then later on you have a recurrent training where you have repetitive tasks to fulfill. The training content is, again, the variety of all training emergency cases, which need to be, let's say, trained and prepared so that you also can repeatedly communicate with all involved personnel. The reasons from time to time, they might change. When we train this, we need also to test this. We do regular drills given by law. So that means we can do tabletop training, we can do partial exercise or every second year full-scale exercise to test effectiveness of our emergency response plan. And we do this to evaluate during the drills everything what is written down, if it's really working, or is it just a piece of paper and we need to develop this further so that we put it back to reality. Just give you an example. For aircraft recovery, they said we will have a recovery plan. So they ordered everything, and then they said, we will borrow then from a construction company a compressor. The reason is compressor doesn't matter, so we will just borrow one and pay for it. At the end of the day, they figured out that the compressor didn't work. It worked. They figured out during drills just to have this. The reason is the pressure was totally different, what was necessary and what was provided by the compressor. So this is just one thing, theory. The other one is practice, which this is also part of the evaluation. And of course, you need to document this. So you need to have the records, to have detailed records when the training took place and the testing activities. Some in Europe is also that firefighters especially need to have individual testing on their skill set. And then we need to prepare reports so to really document that whatever we did was trained and tested, and what was the lesson learned, and what kind of corrective actions we took. So, and if I summarize this, then we have all the different kind of hazards, and they impact our typical PDCA circle. In this case, a little bit different organized. We start with the planning process, establishing the systems and the manuals, do training simulations, establish early warning system, issue and risk management, emergency responses prepared. We establish crisis recognition. What does this mean and who is ordering it? And then we activate it. Then we manage the crisis. And then we do post-crisis management analysis that everything was okay or what need to be developed further. All the details and much more you will get again in this training course provided by SSI. And again, please, if you're interested, go to register at ssi-inc.com. So thank you for this part. So I will unshare.
Okay. Thanks, gentlemen. Frank, go ahead and bring up your last slide. And we'll leave that up there for just a little bit. If anybody has any questions, we'll have the email posted up there again. And hope to see you online on our ERFA course for October 9 through 11. So I thank you everybody for zooming in. And we'll provide this recording as well for 2 weeks for everybody. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'll leave it at that. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.